Ma'am, am I audible to you?
Yes, sir. Audible.
Yes. Uh, our next expert have already joined. Uh, Ma'am, are you there? Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, you are not audible, ma'am.
It's yeah. Is it okay now?
Yes, now.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Good afternoon.
Now you are audible. Good afternoon, ma'am. We will just start the session, ma'am, in next 2 minutes. Just participants actually they were in AICT inaugurations. So within 2 minutes we will start, ma'am.
Yeah, it's okay. No problem.
Okay. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm here. Vinay.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, still the AICT has not ended yet.
Okay, no problem. Take time.
That's why most of the participants have not been able to join it yet. So that's why we are waiting over here.
It's
So
okay.
just wait for some time.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
सावधान के जाए कि तो यार पास पड़ी आएगा जब क्या ना 1 घंटे
Yeah, welcome all back. We are ready to go with the next technical session. And this session is about application of IoT for social good. Some case studies will be presented by Professor Sarbani Roy. Let me introduce her. So Professor Roy is working in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Jadavpur University. She received her PhD degree in engineering from Jadavpur in 2008. She was awarded a Fulbright Nehru Senior Research Fellowship in 2013-14 and joined the research program at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, USA. Her research interests include cloud computing, wireless sensor networks, IoT, social network analysis, and data science. She co-authored more than 130 research papers in international conference proceedings and journals. She has been involved in technical program committees, organizing committees for many international conferences, and also acted as a reviewer for many international conferences and journals. She is a senior member of IEEE also. So we all welcome you, ma'am, for this technical session.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Dr. Manish Kumar. Thank you for having me here. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this FTP program. It's a pleasure to be invited here and to share my knowledge with you all. I hope participants will get interest in this kind of topics where we can apply IoT, AI, all these things for social good. So shall I start my talk? Okay. Okay, so for the network issue, I will prefer to stop the video and will share my screen. If you have any question during the talk, you can simply put that in the chat box. I will pick the questions from the chat box, or if you prefer to ask the questions at the end of the talk, that is also fine with me. So someone is saying the voice is not audible.
It's audible.
Is it audible? Okay.
It's audible.
Okay,
You are audible.
thank-
You are
okay,
audible.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, one more request to the participant. Please do not turn your mic on during the presentation. If you have any query, just you carry into the chat box and then ma'am will answer. Yeah, thank you.
Is the slides, you can see the slides, right?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. Okay. So, so the title of this topic is Applications of IoT for Social Good and some case studies. So my intention is to highlight the opportunities that we can encash by applying Internet of Things and the data analysis techniques for solving different type of societal applications. And to demonstrate that, I have picked some case studies which are quite important for social life, for quality of life of the citizens and netizens of this country. So let me start with the very basic of this concept, Internet of Things. Mostly this concept of Internet of Things is used for the automation thing, where we can think about an environment where the devices, things are connected with each other and they are working together automatically and solving some of the problems. So it basically consists of a wide range of technologies, and the main objective here is to reduce the human intervention in that whole procedure. By doing this, it is not like that humans are not important. Humans are very important. Their knowledge, their expertise are very important. But at the same time, we can offload some of the tasks to this environment by making it an automated environment, and can improve the performance of that environment by taking inputs and knowledge from the human. So human intervention is reduced here by keeping some decision criteria in mind, which are majorly predetermined, and to understand the processes which are involved, their relationships, and how they act upon some particular situations. All these things are embodied through this predetermination kind of environment or in a system. And automation is widely used in industry, in smart city related applications. Different applications are there in medical, in smart city, making a city smart, as well as making an environment smart. There's a huge potential of automation with the help of the technologies like Internet of Things, sensor networks, wireless sensor network, cyber physical system. So all these techniques, all this concept of, if you think about this concepts like Internet of Things and Internet of Things or cyber physical system, wireless sensor network, all these are helping us to get the environment automated one. So this is important technologies for making this environment an automatic one. But this is not sufficient, this putting the sensor, putting the actuators, and then controlling them is not always sufficient, because all these things are generating huge amount of data. And this data is very important to control that entire environment. And storing this data, processing that data, analyzing that data are very expensive, and from the computation point of view, as well as very important from the outcome point of view of the system. So along with these technologies, there is a merging of another field of research, which is called data science. And when I'm saying data science, I'm essentially trying to highlight the important features of AI, which is coming from machine learning, deep learning, or simply statistical approaches. So these are in the present scenario, to achieve any such type of system, or to achieve any such type of goal, usually we are combining these technologies, IoT, CPS, or wireless sensor network, with the data science to fulfill the goal. So now, if you remember that the title of this talk is Application of IoT for Social Good. So the question is how we can make something good for the society. So here there are several applications for that, but I have picked some of them and termed it as a city dynamics. We are actually belongs to some city, and every city has its own dynamics, right? Some cities are very clean, not much polluted in terms of air or noise pollution. Traffic is quite good. But most of the major city of India, or metro cities of India, are actually suffering from a very poor condition of air pollution, noise pollution, traffic, road condition. So these are very common issues of any city, any metro cities, right? So here, I would like to demonstrate how, with the help of Internet of Things, sensors, cyber physical systems, all these technologies, along with the data science, with the power of data science, we can build some systems which can solve some of these issues and can provide benefits to the citizens. So for this purpose, I have picked some issues like the air pollution. The first one is the air pollution. And in air pollution, if we want to monitor the pollution level of the city at different locations, not in some specific locations. Usually for air pollution monitoring, there is the Central Pollution Control Board, or sometimes state level pollution control boards are there, and they have some pollution monitoring stations deployed in some places in the city. And they have developed very costly and very powerful sensor devices, which are able to sense the environment quite nicely. But the problem is they are not very much in count because they are very costly. So it's not possible to deploy this kind of costly sensors in every point of a city. We can in Kolkata city there are 8 number of such pollution monitoring stations. In Delhi, definitely there are a huge number of pollution monitoring systems, more than 30, but that is not the case with most of the cities. In Mumbai, in Chennai, and there are pollution monitoring stations, but not in that number. So with the help of those pollution monitoring stations, it's not possible to monitor every corner of the city, right? So here we can apply this concept of IoT, and we can think about a device that could sense the environment, and that can be connected with your, say, smartphone, and with the help of that citizen can push the data to monitor the air pollution level when it travels different road junctions or a different location of that city. And so with in this way, with the help of this kind of sensing is also known as the participatory sensing, where the citizen can participatory sensing. This is also known as crowd sensing. So with the help of crowd sensing and or participatory sensing, using the Internet of Things devices, some sensor device that can sense the air quality and that can interact with the smartphone, and through that smartphone you can push the data to some server, maybe the cloud, and where you can analyze that data and get back some feedback. So this could be one approach of doing something good for the society. Another application is noise pollution. Similarly, in noise pollution also we can do the same thing with the help of crowd and participatory sensing. We can sense the noise pollution level in different traffic junction, different road, or any location where some infrastructure work is going on. Or sometimes in indoor pollution, indoor noise pollution are quite high. Sometimes when we attend some meetings in physical mode, and then some people get excited, they speak so loudly, and when it's continue for, say, one hour or more than hours, we feel sometimes sick because of that pollution level, that noise pollution level. So that is also not a very healthy thing for the human being. So noise pollution has effect both in the indoor and the outdoor, and both can be monitored, and both can be sensed with the help of this kind of technologies. So next is the traffic conditions. Sometimes traffic, that is a big problem of the major cities, and that could also be monitored with the help of this technology. Road conditions, so if you look at this particular image, the road condition is not good. Lot of potholes are there, and in the rainy season these are filled with water and very difficult for the travelers to understand from where to drive or how to bypass that particular pothole sections. So these things can be monitored with the help of IoT and the technologies like data science, and we can provide some systems and solutions that can be very effective for solving these issues. Mobility pattern, that is another thing. In this pandemic situation, the importance of knowing the mobility pattern of the users and how it affects the transmission of disease from one point to the another point. These things can be easily monitored. These things can be easily studied with the help of this technology. You know, for the mobility pattern, what we actually need, we need to know the location, and that we can get from the GPS. We need to know the timestamp, and if we have these two information, we can get the mobility pattern of a particular user. And once you have this mobility pattern of different users, you can accumulate that, and you can come to know the spreading nature of this kind of diseases. And in this pandemic situation, it would be very helpful to stop this transmission, or to handle it in some way. So there are so many other applications also, but you know, for the limitation of the time, today I will focus on these two, the air pollution one and the noise pollution one. So before going to discuss about this case studies on air pollution and noise pollution, let me share some basic information about the Internet of Things, and then I will discuss how we can apply that technology for pollution monitoring, both air pollution and noise pollution. Okay, so the main components of building this kind of system, we can divide the whole thing into 4 parts. The first part is very important. That is, for this kind of applications, we have to sense the environment, right? And for this purpose, we need sensors. For example, when we are talking about the air pollution, we need some sensors that can monitor the different level of air pollutants. For example, say PM 2.5, PM10, PM 2.5 or PM10, or SOx, NOx, O2, COX, all these things. So we need sensors that can measure the pollutant, the value of this pollutant levels, and then we can generate air quality index out of that. So this whole thing can be possible if we have this kind of sensors. And some noise is coming.
भाई साहब नमस्ते जी, कैसे हो भाई साहब? हाँ जी मैं भी अच्छा हूँ।
Vishal sir, Dr. Vishal, can you please mute yourself?
हाँ, विश्वविद्यालय में ही हूँ आज अभी तो। बाकी सिसोट आपने सुना होगा नाम, यानी कि महेंद्रगढ़ का जो फ्लाईओवर होता है ना, अगर हम उस तरफ जाते हैं तो उससे 1 किलोमीटर पहले एक विलेज है।
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Please continue. Sorry, ma'am.
Okay. So once we have this kind of data, the next thing is act upon that. So for that we need actuators, and to putting all these things together in a particular box, we need microcontroller and microprocessor boards. So for that also we have this Raspberry Pi, Arduino, this kind of technologies to build a small device, very smart to perform its own objective. So this is the main criteria for building any IoT device. Once you have, suppose once you design this kind of device that can sense the environment, that can act upon that environment, and that can do little kind of processing or analysis. So after that, but that device, the problem with this type of device standalone is that it is not very resourceful. There are some resource constraint, and mostly that is for the storage and computation. So these are the main two things that are not very wisely available in this kind of situation. So for this, to handle this problem, what we can do is that we can push that data to the cloud, and the cloud can provide huge amount of storage and computation facility. So once you have this IoT device that can sense the environment, can generate the data, can also do a little bit of processing, but not much of that, then you can take the help of cloud. And for doing all these things, you need this communication requirement, because sometimes different devices may need to communicate with each other. Sometimes they have to push the data to the cloud. So communication is also a very important part of that. And most of these devices are also clubbed with the communication module. And some modules like Bluetooth module or Zigbee module. So this kind of modules or Wi-Fi module directly to send the data to the cloud. So these modules are also connected with this kind of boards. Then, as I told you, the major problem with this standalone IoT devices are like the limitation in this resource constant thing, that is storage and computation. To handle that huge amount of data or the big data, we need appropriate storage and computation infrastructure, and that could be provided by the cloud. Once you have the data stored in the cloud, the next important thing is the processing of that data, and to infer some knowledge or information from that data. So this is the next important part. In this part, we can apply a different type of techniques. Usually there are three popular genre of the techniques available, which are mostly very effective. One is the simply statistical approaches. Then there is a machine learning technique, and then there is the deep learning technique. So usually we apply this kind of things for analyzing the data that is coming from this. Now, for the data part, the problem you can formulate here as a classification problem or the regression problem. If it's a sometimes you may get a time series data, and you may want to predict something, or you may want to forecast something. So based on the nature of the problem, you can pick appropriate techniques from this genre and can apply to analyze the data, and can generate a very good feedback to the user or to the human to achieve that social good objective. So now, when we're building an IoT system, we can figure out there are 5 main components to build that IoT system. The first one is the thing itself, the thing that we want to consider here to be the part of that IoT system. So it could be anything. Say, for example, when you're talking about the air pollution thing, you need a device with the sensors that can sense the air pollutant levels, right? So that device could be connected with your smartphone, or it could be it may have some communication module, so that it can directly push the data to the internet. So the thing itself, or the device, here 2 solutions are available. One is internet enabled, where you can put a communication module, Wi-Fi communication module, say, where with the help of that communication module, it can directly push the data to the client, where you can do all this processing and analysis things. Or another thing is you can put some other ID. For example, in spite of this pollution monitoring, if I give you an example of smart home, in your home you may have different devices, right? Like your washing machine, your microwave oven, your fridge, or the other, your music system, fan, light, everything. So all these things are not smart initially, but by placing some sensor or converting it to the IoT environment, you can build a smart home where automatically the door will identify you by taking the picture, and by analyzing it, that this is someone. It can authenticate you, right? And then it will allow you to enter at your home, and then after entering your home, it can brew you some nice coffee, or it can start its washing machine, or all these things synchronously. It can play some nice music for you. It can switch on the switch on the light, or increase the fan power or AC, or all these things are connected, right? So in this way, if in this type of application, probably you don't need to put IP to all these devices. Here you can utilize some ID information and can connect them with the help of, oh God. Okay. So next is, after this, once you make that particular thing or device smart, the next comes the network. So here it could be part of a local network. So if it is a part of local network, you can think about a gateway node, and that needs to translate the communication protocol to the internet protocol, because inside the home maybe you are using very lightweight communication protocol, but when it is connected to gateway, then maybe you are using Wi-Fi and some other heavyweight internet protocol. So these things need to be tackled by the gateway node. And then you need internet, because you may want to control the entire system from the remote location. And after that, as I told you, the system have this potential of generating huge amount of data, and that data need to be stored somewhere, need to be processed or analyzed. So for that you need backend services. And when the user are using this type of facility, they are using some applications, maybe some app running in their mobile phone. So some front-end services are also important. So in short, the thing itself that you are actually making the part of that Internet of Things, then the network or the internet, these two are part of the communication, and then services. Definitely one is the backend service and another one is the front-end service. So now if we look at the internet stack, this stack is a very known one, right? The TCP/IP protocol stack, which consists of 5 layers: physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer, and application layer. But if you look at the stack, you can see that there is not much change here. Usually to consider both the wired network and wireless network, there is this 802.3 and 802.11 standard to accommodate this huge number of IPs, so IP version 4 and IP version 6. The rest is pretty much same. The TCP UDP for transport layer protocol, and for the application layer protocol, the RESTful API is very popular nowadays, because it is using the HTTP request for get, put, post, and delete data. And with the cloud use on the rise, APIs are actually emerging to expose web services. And here, REST API is a very good choice for building APIs that allow users to connect and interact with the cloud services. So most of the applications which are developed as a cloud services, they are actually using REST API concept with the help of HTTP, TLS, and UDP most of the times, and building their application so popular in this environment. So by extending this same stack, the only problem here is the resource shortage or the constraint in the resources. So usually in the IoT environment, the devices are very constant in nature. They are very constant. They don't have much resources in terms of the storage or computation, or sometimes communication also. So for that, you need to consider the constrained version of these protocols. And see, we can't do much with the physical layer, but with the data link layer, the standards 802.3, 802.11. 802.11 is for wireless, but still it's a heavyweight. And for IoT environment, we need energy efficient, low power, low cost solution, and for that 802.15 is a very good solution. And you know, Zigbee 8015.4 or Bluetooth 15.1, these are very common choices for building this. But at the same time, nowadays there are different devices, Raspberry Pi, Arduino, these are coming with the Wi-Fi model directly, where you can directly push the data to the internet, or you can use the low cost, low power, low energy solutions like Zigbee and Bluetooth. Another change over here is for the adaptation for IPv6. IPv6 is again very costly to process because it need that computation power, right? So to handle that, there is an adaptation over IPv6, which is known as 6LoWPAN. 6 stands for IPv6 and low stands for low power wireless personal area network. It basically defines the encapsulation and header compression mechanism over IPv6. So 6LoWPAN is a very obvious choice for IoT based application. And then we know that between TCP and UDP is a very cost-effective solution. So UDP is another very obvious choice in transport layer. On top of that, there are different type of application layer protocols like POP, AQMP, MQTT, DTLS, etc. And using this application layer protocol with the help of REST model, we can build the applications which are quite good for this kind of environment. So next is the application layer protocol. So here you can see that the same thing, the same architecture can be extended based on this. This layer is pretty much same where we are using 6LoWPAN, and here and the data link layer is also using 802.15.4. Is there any question or anything? I'm getting some noise again. So in the link layer, if we consider 802.15 and on top of that in the network layer 6LoWPAN, this part is pretty much fixed. Now, based on the choices of UDP and TCP, we can pick the security layer. If it is UDP, it's data transport layer security, and if it is TCP, then transport layer security, TLS is the choice. And then you can pick the application layer protocol like POP, MQTT, MQP, DDS, XMPP. A very quick go through to this different protocol. POP stands for Constant Application Protocol. It's simply based on the client server model and utilizes UDP and HTTP communication protocols, which is used as a REST model, where POPs, where different clients that are using constant application protocol can invoke a server, and can server with the server they can perform some message exchanges between the clients and the server. So that is a one application layer protocol popularly used in IoT. The next is the message queue telemetry transport protocol. This one is mainly based on this subscriber publisher model, where the nodes which are you can consider them as the sensor that can generate the data and they can publish the data. It is also a broker-based model where they publish all this data to the broker, and the subscribers, those who are interested in that data, can take the data from the broker. Next is the AMQP. Sorry, it's not AMQP, it is MQTT. Sorry for this mistake. This one is MQTT. So that is again using the simple concept of publisher and subscriber, where it has the broker has changed by this concept of exchange between the publisher and subscriber, and that change is nothing but the multiple queues maintained by the broker. So I hope you remember in the previous model there was only one queue, but here there are multiple queues, and the publisher can put the data in those queues and subscriber can subscribe the data from that queues. Next is the data distribution service. That is also based on the publisher subscriber, but it is not a broker based approach. Here the sender can directly, or the sensor, rather you can consider here as the sensor, sender or publisher, they can directly write that data in the as a data object, and in that particular domain that can be consumed by the receiver directly, or that can be subscribed by the receiver directly for different applications. So by using different type of application protocols, there is a slight change in the in that protocol stack for IoT, but it's mostly following the same concept like internet stack. Now, if we put all these things together, we will get a very basic architecture of any IoT system. And if you look at this particular diagram, you can see that initially what we have something. So say if you take the example of smart home, this could be anything. This could be your dishwasher, or this could be your coffee maker, this could be your washing machine, or so on. So this could be different things are there. Now in those things, what you have to place? You have to place the sensor and actuators. So sensors and actuators are very important part of this thing. So once you place the sensor and actuator, they will be able to sense their environment and will also be able to act upon it. Next, you need a processing, a small or lightweight processing unit that will process the data, and based on that, it will decide on communicating the data to the next level. So third important part is the communication. So this is the communication thing. So so these things, now after placing this sensor, actuator, processing and communication, now these things are able to be part of the IoT systems. So they are connected to some local network, or maybe suppose if it's a smart home, it may be the modem of your home through which it can be get connected. So that is nothing but the gateway. So that gateway must have two communication module. Say here you can see two communication module. One to establish the communication between the thing at the gateway, and another is to establish the communication with the gateway to the outside world or the internet. So behind the internet, there is the backend services, or as I told you, the cloud or the server end. So it has one communication module to just simply to establish the connection with the internet, and then there is the storage service or data analysis. All these functionalities will be available over here. So this is giving us a very nice idea about the architecture of any IoT system. Now to make these things more clear, I will take one example of home automation. So how we can build a smart home? In this particular talk, I have highlighted the Arduino Uno board, but you can also explore the Raspberry Pi. So Arduino Uno is an open source microcontroller board, which is based on the Microchip Atmega 328 processor microcontroller, and it has 6 analog pins, A0 to A5. If you see over here, so A0 to A5, these are the analog pins, and 14 digital pins, 0 to 13, that you can see over here. So it can be powered by USB-A to USB-B cable, or by an external 9-volt battery, though its access voltage is between 7 to 20 volts. This is the ESP8266 module. This one is a Wi-Fi module. You can see that, as I told you, sometimes we pick some low cost, low energy solutions like Bluetooth module or the Zigbee module, but this Arduino 2 or the Raspberry Pi are also coming with the Wi-Fi module. So you can also utilize Wi-Fi module to directly push the data to the internet. It is available as only Wi-Fi module, as well as a development kits like ESP826632 and Node 8266 Node MCU. So these two are the development kits, and this can be used as the Arduino board also, and we can pick any one solution. Either you can use it as a board, or you can use it as a development kits or as a standalone device. So for a smartphone purpose or home automation, you need a relay circuit. So what is the purpose of the relay circuit? In the relay circuit, you will find there are three three main pins, that is normally open, normally closed, and the common. And you can connect the neutral of this AC load to common and phase to either normally open or normally closed, depending on your requirement. So if a particular phase is connected to normally open, the AC load will be switched off normally, or it will be switched on when the digital input signal to the relay is high. So by utilizing this thing only, you can connect different devices to this relay and can build a smart home. So for this, you will get a Blink app that provides a web server and a mobile app to monitor and control devices through this Wi-Fi module. And for this purpose, you have to write a build server, and you will get this kind of interface in your smartphone that will communicate with the Blink servers. For this purpose, you have to do the authentication, and that is actually provided by the Blink to communicate through the mobile app. We will get more information in this link about this Blink app. Now for the smart home scenario, here we have considered several situations, and we'll try to connect them with each other, because when we are saying that Internet of Things, it is actually connecting different things together. So in this environment that we have picked using the Arduino board and the Wi-Fi module, you can write decision function using C-like language and upload them to the ROM of that Arduino board. Now, depending on the different real-time values from the sensors that you are getting from that components, you can take the decision function, or you can write your decision function, and based on that, the system will act, and you can pass that signal to the relay boards, and with the help of that relay board, the particular devices will be switched on or switch off. So here, the idea is, suppose we have four things. The first is the water tank, where we have a water level, and we'll measure the water level with the help of an IoT device, and we'll switch on the pump. That is the first case. And this one, where we will monitor the water level of a tank and we'll switch on the pump. Then there is this temperature and humidity sensor at home, and based on that, we'll switch on the fan. So fan will be switched on. The third one is there is a camera that sends a real-time video to the Arduino, and looking at the person's face on camera, the user may or may not unlock that door lock, electromagnetic door lock. The fourth one is photoresistor sensor, and by depending on this some threshold value or intensity level, the bulb connected through that relay will be switched on or off. So these are the four situations. So the objective is, first we have to sense something, and based on this, that sensing value, we have to take some decisions like switching off the pump or switching on the pump, or switching off or on fan, or opening the door lock based on the face detection or recognition, and then switching on or off the bulb. So very simple case over here. So here you can see at different places we can put those sensors, like a photoresistor sensor over here, and then this is the temperature and humidity sensor. There is this water level sensor, and then there is a general purpose, some pins are also shown over here, camera sensors, and the router. So the first step is, it will this is giving us the idea of the smartphone app, where you can see the temperature, humidity, door camera feed, lock or unlock decision, water level, switch on or off, bulb, pump, or fan. So based on the data, when it is coming, we can take the decision. For example, here you can see when there is this water level sensor, so it is monitoring the water level. When it is below some particular value, it can switch on that particular relay and will switch on the pump. So again, it will check the water level whether less than 60 centimeter, it switch on the pump. So this is the decision taken by this automated environment. So that will also be reflected in the mobile app. So in this way, you can also consider the other situations when the water level is greater than some particular level, you switch off the pump and so on. And similarly, you can switch on the fan, you can switch on the light based on the sensor value that you are getting. So some decision could be taken based on the sensor value that is coming to the environment. So this will give you a nice idea about different applications in the smart home. So switching on, switching off, bulb, pump, fan, these are something not very difficult, a rule-based decision you can take. But face recognition and based on that open the door or close the door, these things are not that easy. You have to know the object detection, you have to know the face recognition things. So you need to apply more sophisticated AI techniques for doing that. So in a same example of smart home, you can put a lot of complexity, you can think about a lot of complex problems, and you can build your own solution for this purpose. So like for light intensity also in the same manner. So now I'm coming to the second part of my talk. So now I will focus on different type of smartphone based application for air pollution, noise pollution, etc. Before going to start that, we don't need always to build IoT devices. We all have an IoT devices, that is our smartphone. So now there are several built-in sensors in a smartphone. So if you look at your smartphone, you will see that there are an array of sensors, starting from the proximity sensor, ambient sensor, light sensor, GPS sensor, accelerometer, humidity, gyroscope, magnetometer, pressure sensor, temperature, a lot number of microphone sensor, lot number of sensors are there. So we can utilize our smartphone for sensing the environment, for getting the data, for analyzing the data, and for building some application to solve some issues. So again, I'm coming back to the monitoring applications of city dynamics, and you can see we have there are several applications, right? But today I will focus on air pollution and noise pollution mainly. So air pollution means, as I told you, most of the cities of our country are very polluted. Mainly the metro cities are very polluted, and this pollution can cause a very serious damage to the health to the citizens. So it's very important to monitor the pollution level and to try to address this issue in a micro level, in a high granularity level. And that is not always possible with the help of this pollution monitoring stations, because most of the pollution monitoring stations are having a very costly, powerful sensors. But the main problem is they are deployed in some specific locations of this city. They are not deployed in every corner of the city, and probably you don't have any idea what is the pollution level in your university or in the road that you are it's following to reach your university. So these are the issues that could be tackled if we think about some smart solution where we can utilize the knowledge of the citizen as well as this smartphone sensing. We can build a very nice application where we can get very micro level data or high granular data for this particular problem. Similarly, noise pollution is another very big problem. Unnecessary honking in the roads and creating noise pollution in some infrastructural sites, and that also cause damage to the human health, like high blood pressure, sleeping disorders, even heart problems. So these are really big problem. Sorry, these are really big problem, and to tackle these problems we have to take the uh, power of crowd or citizens. So this is another field research area which is nowadays very popular in research community, which is known as the crowd sensing or the participatory sensing, also known as mobile crowd sensing. So if you look at this images, you can see that the pollutions are actually reported by the citizens, by the crowd, with the help of their mobile devices. They are capable, because their mobile devices are smartphones nowadays, are very powerful, coming with a good amount of computation power, and very nice cameras, good quality cameras, and they can be used for sensing and computation, or for collecting this data, and then they share this data uh, with the government or with the city authority, or sometimes with the news or print media. And then there is this need to analyze the data, to extract the information or knowledge, to measure, analyze, and infer any processes or information which is of common interest. So this kind of approach is also very essential in solving different type of societal issues. So the idea is, with the help of technologies like Internet of Things, smartphone sensing, cyber physical system, all these things, with the participatory sensing or crowd sensing, and then applying data science techniques, we can build this kind of solutions. So this is a very obvious choice for smart city. If you pick any application, starting from smart grid, smart parking, smart transportation, smart environment, smart lighting, anything smart, you just place smart in front of anything, you need these components only: cyber physical system, IoT, data science, and participatory sensing or the crowd sensing. So these are actually the main ingredients of this domain for doing any good solution. Now, the point here is that I have highlighted earlier also, that the smartphone and IoT, they are able to sense the environment, and they have this potential of generating huge amount of data. But the problem is the resource constraint, or the resource unavailability in these devices. So they cannot store all this data together. They cannot process that data in one run. So for that, we need some other solutions here. So the next solution is linking this data which is coming from the IoT devices to the cloud. So cloud is another very essential pillar in this kind of solution, because the IoT or the smartphones or the other devices that we are using for sensing the environment, they have this potential of generating huge data or big data, but they don't have the potential to store them, to analyze them in that environment. So the data is actually pushed to the cloud, and cloud provides that infrastructural support to store or to provide computational power to it. So in this way, IoT and cloud converged with each other, integrated with each other. So here, to link it in a better way, I have taken few architectural reference architecture from Google Cloud Platform and AWS and ThinkPad. So first, I'm demonstrating the reference architecture for Google Cloud. So here you can see that at the left hand side we have this sensor. So here you will find different type of sensors. So this is essentially the part of Internet of Things, or the sensor, wireless sensor network, whatever you can say. So these sensors are generating huge amount of data, And finally, by analyzing and processing the data, these devices or these sensors need to be controlled. So the direction of the control should be coming from the another half towards the sensors, and data will be generated from sensor and going to the next in this direction. Now, sometimes it's very obvious to connect that IoT devices with some edge devices. So edge means edge is nothing but a gateway device, or it could be your smartphone also. So that IoT device will be connected with your smart home, and sometimes there are scenarios where you don't need to get connected with the cloud. The edge device can do a lot of some part of the analysis, a real-time analytics, and can send back the control to the sensors. But if it is not the case, then data need to be pushed towards the cloud. And in the cloud environment, there are quite popular solutions available, like from Google Cloud Platform or Amazon Web Services. And here you can see that different type of services like BigQuery or Cloud Machine Learning, Cloud Bigtable, these are some of the major components. They will be able to store and to analyze the data, will provide the with the help of training, and then can provide some outcome back to the user. And for data usage or to generate the insight, different type of services like Cloud Data Lab or Data Science Studio, this kind of services are also available in Google Cloud Platform. Similar solution you will find if you look at the AWS solution. In AWS, you can see that the same thing, but the architecture, the component names are different. Here you can see that there is this thing, the thing or the IoT Internet of Things part, and then there is this IoT gateway or the edge node, like in the Google Cloud Platform. So they can they can republish the data, and based on some rule or action, they can see and take the decision from the IoT gateway. Again, based on some rule, it can take the action of pushing the data to the cloud. So at the cloud, you can see there is for data storage, or you can see there is the Amazon DynamoDB and AWS Lambda for function or processing of the data. And then there is this API gateway. With the help of API gateway, API, we can invoke that service, and we can get some real-time insight on that data. So you can pick any solution for your cloud, maybe from the GCP or AWS, that up to you. However, these things are actually you have to pay price for this, but there are some open source IoT platform also available, like ThingsBoard. In ThingsBoard, you can say that you can see that it's a pretty much similar architecture, where you have the IoT devices and the IoT gateway, and they can communicate with the server end using the different application layer protocol like MQTT or POP or HTTP, etc. And then in that server end, there is this rule engine. Based on that, you can access the core services, or you can put that messages in the queue, and then you can generate the real-time insights over here that can be accessed by the end user. So this is a very quite similar with the previous two architectures, but the main thing here is it's an open source IoT platform. You don't need to pay, so you can use it. Now I'm coming to some of our works. So based on this concepts, we have developed a system called JUSense. So this is the architecture of the JUSense. It stands for JUSense. JU stands for Jadavpur University, or you can say it is Judicious Urban Sensing Task. So here you will see the JUSense functions. So the whole idea is we have divided it into multiple layers. The first layer is this layer. So we can pick different type of smart city application, as I told you, air pollution monitoring, noise pollution monitoring, or traffic monitoring, or road condition monitoring, etc. We are also considering citizen as a sensor, along with this IoT and smartphone as a sensor, all these things. So here majorly we have the smartphone as a sensor, citizen as a sensors, and we have considered IoT or smartphone together here. Then comes this the edge node or the user smartphone. In the user smartphone, you will find different applications. So this is AirSense for air pollution monitoring. This one is the noise sense. This one is the sense the city for mobility monitoring, and this one is the drive and road condition sensing. So different modules are there. There is one point that you have to understand, that the smartphones are nowadays quite good, resourceful, but not sufficient always, based on the data coming from this layer. So for sometimes for real-time response, you can apply some local processing and can send back the feedback, or sometimes you may need to push the data to the cloud. So for local processing, you can provide some data storing using SQLite by different formats like JSON, text, or log, image, audio, CSV, flat files that you can use for data storage purpose. And then for data processing, you can apply different type of real-time analytics and machine learning, but lightweight ML, and you can deploy some pre-trained model over here. So it will that will not be very heavyweight. By simply filtering, parsing, and feature extraction, you can build that. So with the help of this, you can provide some real-time response back to the user, but it's not always quite good for the accuracy or performance point of view. So this collected data pushed to the cloud. So in the cloud environment, we have divided it into two parts. One is the handler, event handler. Event handler means that will consist of main functions for each and every module, like air sense function, noise sense function, drive and road sense functions, sense the city functions, all these things. And then all these functions are actually using some of these models, like map generation model, or once you monitor the pollution and then you want to generate a map, or the stay point detection model. That means in the mobility of the user, you may want to check the stay point of that particular user, or trajectory mining model, road condition detection model. This should be the condition of the road, whether there is a pothole or not. So the classification problem, so you can apply some CNN based models over there. Then there is this driving pattern detection model, whether the driver is calm driver or a very aggressive driver, or it's a rough driving or not. For that, you have to take the accelerometer, gyroscope, or GPS, timestamp all this data, and by doing some analysis over there, say random forest or decision tree, by applying this kind of shallow machine learning technique, may perform much better here for the driving pattern detection model. And sometimes you also need the data fusion model. So all these things are actually linked with each other. For one function, you may need to take care of more than one such models, and the others. So one model can provide its functionality to different function. That is the key thing over here. And once you get this API gateway, with the help of, you can send the service request over here. You can send the service request over here, and you can also get the service response. So this service response can be sent back to the user. So now I'm giving you more detail about this application. So the first thing is the air quality monitoring. So participatory sensing based pollution data collection. So for this purpose, we have developed a device which is known as the air quality monitoring device, AQMD. So this is the air quality monitoring device, AQMD, which consists of different type of particle density sensor. This one to measure the PM 2.5, PM 10, and then gas sensor for air quality, MQ135, to detect NH3, NOx, benzene, smoke, CO2, etc. And then it has a Bluetooth module, HC05, for wireless communication. So here the idea is, this one is the device, AQMD, and then This will be connected with your smartphone. So this is the smartphone. So by combining the data coming from the smartphone and the AQMD and some other sensing context, you can build the data. So for the smartphone, what we are taking the GPS information to get the geolocation of pollution sample. Then we are taking the microphone for ambient noise in decibel, system clock for to get the timestamp when sample is collected, context data. This is mainly simple information like land use, weather data, etc. Proximity sensor data to see whether the phone is in a right mode to collect the data or not. For example, if you are keeping the phone in your pocket and then you are sensing the data, then probably that data will be of no use. You have to hold the phone in a right manner to get the good quality data. So for that context sensing thing, or to understand whether the data is of good quality or not, a proximity sensor is very important. Then there is the accelerometer sensor also. So all these sensors, some are part of the IoT device, that is the AQMD over here, and another a part of the smartphone itself. By combining all this data, we can further process that. But before going to discuss that part, let me tell you how we can utilize the microphone itself, microphone sensor of the smartphone itself, for noise pollution monitoring. So we have this microphone sensor in our smartphone right over here. This is the location. So when we are taking the raw data, any sound or noise data over here, it actually placed in a buffer, and then we take the root mean square of that buffer. We add the timestamp and location, where the timestamp is coming from the system clock and the location is coming from the GPS subsystem. We add this information to the queue, and after a period of time, we flush the buffer and so on. So in this way, we are taking the data from this queue, which is a time series data, which is that will fulfill the purpose of our noise pollution monitoring. So the monitoring air and noise pollution, there are few steps that we have to follow. The first is the data collection. That is it's based on the crowd sensing or participatory sensing. So it's a rigorous data collection step with the help of citizens using this concept of participatory or crowd sensing. We involve the citizens here to directly take part in this pollution data collection process, and the main benefit that we can get from here is the elimination of data sparsity problem. Because as I told you, there is this pollution control board, but they have some pre-deployed pollution monitoring stations. So and that monitoring stations are really very good, but they are not sufficient to cover every point of the city. So by involving citizens, we can get that rigorous amount of data and can also handle this problem of data sparsity. Then comes the second point, that is pre-processing. Pre-processing is another very important point. Here, two things are very essential to perform. One is the data cleaning. Sometimes we get the data which is coming from the smartphone, but the smartphone is not placed in a right manner. So we are getting some wrong data. So that kind of context aware data cleaning is important here. And then another part is the calibration, because we all are using smartphones, and the smartphones are from different makers, and they probably don't have the same type of sensors. So we have to do some calibration there also. The third step is very essential, that is the data analysis. So data fusion is very important here, because the data is coming from different sensors. So if we able to fuse the data, we can build a very nice predictive models from that area of spatial interpolation, or the machine learning, or the deep learning techniques that can also be used for analysis purpose. We can apply a very relevant and powerful time series analysis over there to forecast or predict the next situation. And finally, the important part is the visualization. After doing the analysis, we have to send back some feedback and recommendation to the users. So that visualization is also very important, where that will be very useful for the user. So usually the data collection technique in traditional manner is with the help of pollution monitoring station. As I told you, very few, I mean, there are some cities you will find very few number of pollution monitoring cities, pollution monitoring stations. Like in Kolkata, you can see there are 7 or 8 number of pollution monitoring stations. But in Delhi, there is huge number of pollution monitoring stations. But in Odisha, you can see very less. Okay, in Ahmedabad and in Gujarat, in Rajasthan, quite few. And so there are some cities where you will find some pollution monitoring stations, but it's not very densely covered. So data sparsity is a big problem here. Another problem is the cost, high cost. But the positive thing is very accurate data. Accuracy, the sensors are very good quality sensors, and the accuracy is very high. But the main problem is the sparsity. So similarly with the noise pollution monitoring, again, very few number of stations are there with the same problem of high cost and sparsity. So both the problems can be handled with the help of this participatory sensing technique. So what we are taking over here, we are taking the smartphone sensor data like GPS, accelerometer, proximity, gyroscope, magnetometer, timestamp, etc. For air pollution data, we are taking PM 2.5, PM10, COX, NOx, SOX, etc. to generate the AQI. Noise pollution data, we are taking the honking rate, noise in decibel. Meteorological data, wind speed, temperature, rainfall, etc. Land use information also. Contextual data, traffic condition, crowd flow, etc. In a land use, we are taking like whether it's an urban area or semi-urban or rural area, residential or commercial area, or distance from the main road, etc. All this information we are considering. Here you can see the Android app built by our students for JU Sense, which has air sense as well as noise sense both. We can see the different information over here. This is the longitude, latitude coming from the GPS information, and then the accelerometer value, XYZ value, air context, whether it's outdoor or indoor, region category, whether it's a street or road, then the AQI value, PM 2.5, PM1, some weather information. Similarly, in the noise module, you will find similar type of information along with the noise value in decibel. When we are taking the data, when we are collecting the data, we are also considering both the environments, indoor environment as well as outdoor environment, where you can see the AQMD device, I mean, just placed in the backpack of the student, and he is working in the indoor and the outdoor location. And they are also using the smartphone for collecting the noise pollution data. And along with that, we are also taking the ground truth data by using some standard devices, pollution monitoring. So for air pollution as well as for noise pollution. These are not the devices built by us. These are the standard pollution monitoring devices. So we'll see we will use this data as a ground truth, and then we'll see the performance of our system. Now for pre-processing, as I told you, we focused on two things. One is the data cleaning and another one is the calibration. So for the data cleaning purpose, we perform the context-aware data cleaning, whether the phone is placed in the right way or not. And then we perform the map matching, and then we perform the calibration. So as I told you, for data cleaning, it's very important how we have hold the smartphone, whether it is in the packet or bag, whether it has a large deviation from the ground truth or not. So based on that, we will decide the usability of that data. So when the data, when the phone is held in the hand, we are getting very good quality data or best quality data. But when the phone call is in progress, if we record the same noise level, then that is of no use, because the phone isn't engaged in an active call. Similarly, GPS data also suffer from low accuracy when we are near to some buildings or bridges or tree covered areas. So to address that, we have developed a context discovery module. We'll check whether the call is in progress or phone is in hand or phone is in bag or pocket. And we consider only the data when the phone is in hand. For calibration purpose, first initially, if you look at this particular graph, you can see that sometimes the sensor are very low cost sensor, and the reference sensor are very high cost, right? So if you get something like this where the low cost sensor reading and the ideal response are pretty much same, then we don't need to do any calibration. So this is the ideal case. But in reality, this low cost sensors suffers from very poor measurement of accuracy, and we are getting this kind of things. So now once by analyzing this relationship, we can figure out the calibration model that maps this measurement of a low cost sensor to those of an accurate sensor. So calibration is this important for here. After that, for the data analysis purpose, we focused mainly on the spatial interpolation techniques, because we have data in some points but not on all the points. So the idea here is to predict the value of those points where we don't have the data. So for this, we can apply different techniques like in non-geostatistical techniques like natural neighbors, or based on the inverse distance weighting, all these things. Or we can apply statistical techniques like simple kriging and different variants of the kriging, like ordinary kriging, universal kriging. Or we can combine these two things like regression kriging. Along with that, now very shallow machine learning techniques like support vector meshing or random forest are also perform really good in this kind of solution decision tree. And also deep learning techniques are also performing good, like neural networks. Sometimes this LSTM, long short-term memory based neural networks, or other different variants of LSTMs are also giving very good performance, high performance in this kind of analysis. So as I told you, by getting all this data, we have to figure out the meteorological features or traffic and road related features and other features. After identifying that features, we build the models, and that models will help us to infer different results. So that is the part of the data analysis. Here you can apply statistical approaches or shallow learning techniques or deep learning techniques. Now with the popularity of deep learning techniques, LSTM, we have, I mean, some of our students worked on this, and they got really very good results when they applied this LSTM technique on this kind of problems. The next important step over here is the spatial analysis software. You will find there are several softwares like ArcGIS or R or QGIS or GRASS or Saga. Among them, ArcGIS is no doubt very good, but you can also get quite good result with the QGIS and GRASS. They are the open source, so it's quite easy to handle them. But ArcGIS is not free of charge. So now I will show some of the results that we got while doing this research. So here you can see that AQI map generated for indoor environment. This one is the is our 4th floor corridor and some of the rooms. Here you can see there is one AC room, and the outlet of that AC room is towards this corridor, and the pollution level is a bit high over there. These colors are indicating the air quality level. The green one is the good, from 0 to 50. That is based on the government declared protocol. We have considered this. And red is really unhealthy. It's above 151 to 200. Similarly, this result is showing the air quality index map for outdoor environment. This one is the individual exposure to air pollution. One of our volunteers took a bike ride and collected this data. That is the study area over here. This is the air pollution map after applying. If you can see the previous result, see in this previous result, there we have data of some specific points that was traversed by that particular volunteer. We don't have the data in the entire location. So here the objective is to interpolate the data value of this location. So here after applying interpolation technique, we can generate this type of continuous data map or air pollution map. So here, this one is the result of air pollution during Diwali 2019, because last year, due to this pandemic and lockdown, we didn't able to get this study. But here you can see from 7 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. this was the pollution level, but from 8 to 8:30 p.m. it was quite high, and Kolkata was almost in the top of the list of the most pollutant city in India at that period of time. Then we have also considered some of the scenarios of storm like Fani. In 3rd May 2019, that made landfall near Puri, Odisha. That was an extremely severe cyclonic storm. And here, here you can see the PM10 and PM2.5 effect during Fani, pre-Fani and post-Fani. So during Fani, it was pretty lower because of the storm, but before that it was high, and the post-Fani scenario was also very high. This one is for the cyclonic storm Bulbul. That was a tropical cyclone which struck Vietnam and the Indian state of West Bengal as well as Bangladesh in November 2019. So the effect of Bulbul on air quality at our study area, Jadavpur University, we got this kind of result. During Bulbul, it was pretty low, but pre-Bulbul scenario, you can see that was very high, and post-Bulbul scenario, it was also very high. Amphan, very recent one on 20 May 2020, that made landfall in the West Bengal directly. And here you can see that 2019, that period of 2019 was not a lockdown period. So here you can see that was very high during that period of time. But in 2020, it was already lockdown period. So you can see that it differs quite well with the 2019 in both the PM10 and PM2.5. During lockdown, actually the traffic was not very high, so the pollution level is actually quite good. So this is Yash, May 26, 2021, this year only, in the month of May, that landfall north of Dhamra port and south of Bahanga at the same intensity. So here again, you can see the difference between the 2019 and 2021 PM10 and PM2.5. During the Yash, that was definitely low in both period of time. And when we, you can see that in 2019, it was also quite low. The reason was that we have checked that that was the, period of time when there was rain in that days, so it was quite high. But if you compare these results of 2021 and 2019, you can see the difference of pre and post Yash scenario. These are some of the visualizations for individuals' exposure to noise pollution. Again, these are taken from the volunteers' personal exposure to noise during a city bus trip in these locations. And this is after getting an overall city noise pollution in maps. Indoor noise pollution exposure, that can also be measured like this. And this is the noise pollution map, which is after interpolation that we can generate, which is a continuous map. And And this was generated for our study area in Jadavpur University area. So finally, we have this kind of application where you can pick the services, like what type of service you want. Like here, air pollution map, you have to specify the area, Jadavpur Thana area, and then you have to specify the session, whether it's a morning session or evening session or afternoon session. Based on that, we can generate this kind of maps, and this is kind of a service of feedback we can give it back to the user. So why this is important for why this could be important for the user? Because sometimes users are affected by some health issues, and they probably want to avoid polluted road or polluted area. So this could be a very important information for them, and they can avoid those locations. They can take some other less polluted routes. So this kind of recommendation we can also make, and different type of services based on this we can generate. So I'm almost at the end of this lecture, and there are some of our papers, recent papers, which are the result of this research. If you are interested, you can go through that. So thank you so much. Now I'd like to take some questions. So if you have any questions.
So, any
Yes.
participant have any question? So they may ask now.
Hello,
Mhm.
is
Yes.
I'm audible?
Yeah.
Madam, just I have a small question that as the topic of IoT, before 5G also, that means at present also we are doing IoT, various applications are there. With the help of 4G, we are able to do that. Then how it is going to be different when we are going to implement 5G with IoT?
Yeah. See, so your question is mainly about the evolution in the communication. Sorry, some noise is coming. I think, Ranjit, you have to mute your. Okay. Yeah. So see, initially when we started doing research in Internet of Things, we tried to build some solutions which are very lightweight, low cost, and low energy solutions, right? So most of the solutions are based on the LTE. So however, there is this involvement of different communication protocols and all those things. So with the advancement in communication layer, the IoT research will be able to adapt it. So there is no problem at all. So if you have Bluetooth solution, fine. If you want to take Zigbee solution, that is fine. If you want to take Wi-Fi 4G solution, that is fine. If you have 5G, you can also adapt it 5G solutions, right? So that is nowhere hampering the research in the IoT direction, but it will definitely will provide more benefit, better communication advancement in that particular solution. Is that okay, Ranjit?
Ma'am, just I didn't understand one point that when we are saying that industry 4.0 we are involving IIoT. So this is all about how fast we are going to means my understanding says that it's all about when we are going for 5G with IoT, the latency and other parameter definitely will have an impact, because there are several sensors, the data which we are collecting. If we are doing in LTE advanced, there will be more delay, and as per 5G, if we are doing it, the latency will be low, and the practical applications and approach will be much more simpler. That is why V2X and other things are coming in picture, as far as my understanding goes. If it is right or wrong, this.
Yes, it is right, but it's not always about, see, it's about the performance that you want to achieve, right? Sometimes you want to build a solution which is cost effective. Now you have to define what do you mean by that cost. Cost could be the energy, cost could be in terms of throughput, cost could be in terms of latency, delay, etc. Now when you have all these ingredients, when you're building the solution, and if you say have 5G as well as say some low power solutions, which one will you pick? It depends upon your cost function. If you want to make it a very low latency solution, a very real time real response solution, then you will definitely will pick a communication protocol which is much faster in that concept. But if you want to make some trade-off there, so you want a low power, low cost solution, as well as something when sometimes you don't need a real-time response. Say when you are measuring the temperature, continuously measuring temperature, you don't need to send that temperature every time. If there is any change, then only you probably want to send it, right? Similarly, suppose if you think about some surveillance application. In the surveillance application, the importance is very high. Every time you, I mean, every face image is important for you. So you have to stream every face image for that. So you need to send everything. So that there the requirement is different. So based on the application requirement, it's wise to pick which particular technology will be good for that. But the point you have mentioned that with the 5G or the better communication protocol, we will get a less latency, high throughput solution. Yes, definitely you are right on that point. Your understanding is right. Is that okay, Ranjit?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Is there any other question?
Is there anyone who want to have question?
No questions? Hello. Hello. Hello, Binay. Hello. Hello, is there anyone from the organizing committee? I don't know. Shall I leave or?
ईमेल पे पहुंच गई ईमेल बनाने बोली आज ईमेल बनाओगे सारे अपनी
Yes. Hello. Ma'am, are you there?
Ah, yes, I'm
I
still.
think I lost my connection. I think.
Okay, no problem.
Ma'am, thank you for this wonderful session and sharing this informative knowledge with us, and hope to again hear from you in the future from our upcoming session. Thank you, ma'am, a lot, and taking out the time out of the busy schedule.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I'm leaving now.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And the participant, please join again at 2:30 p.m. We'll be having a next session at 2:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for there. Let us meet you again at 2:30 p.m.
Is there any feedback link?
Yes, we will share in the WhatsApp. Actually, I have already shared the first session feedback. We will again share the second session feedback. So please follow the WhatsApp.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.